Hey everyone, welcome to On the Block 3. Really excited to have Brooke Ellis here, who is the design lead at Block. Um, I'm always blown away at how culturally relevant Block brands are, especially for financial products. Like the Square and Cash App brands have both really cut through, and I think a lot of that has to do with the strength of our design and just how these products feel to people. Um, and so I think Brooke and her team are huge components of that. So, Brooke, thank you for doing this. I'd love to start maybe with just your background. How did you get into design in the first place? What's your career looked like? How did you find yourself at Block? Like all that would be great to start.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that intro too. It's awesome to be here and talk about all this stuff. Yeah, how did I get into design? I think my background is somewhat unconventional. I didn't train to be a designer. I studied and wanted to be a writer and had just like a childhood and history and upbringing that was all about stories and books and music and culture and humanities. And I just got lucky enough to be working when a bunch of people wanted websites and I figured out how to build and design them. And so I kind of like stumbled into design by way of just being fascinated with what I now know to be brand or storytelling or and how that applies to product and product development. But that led me down like a really interesting path. I worked at a lot of places, ultimately landed in a consultancy called Frog Design, which has been around now, I think, for almost 50 years. It was a classic industrial design firm, worked with Steve Jobs, designed very early Apple computers. And when I joined, I worked there for a number of years. When I joined, we like at that stage, we're basically doing this huge spectrum of design works, really gnarly software projects, connected experience projects with clients like Disney, Magic Band, park experience, software that the staff uses, app that the attendee uses, like all of these like incredibly complex parts. And that was like a really formative experience for me. And it was the first time I could like actively connect brand and storytelling with like just hardcore product design and development. I went from there to like a number of in-house roles. I worked in editorial for a while. I was at Airbnb for a number of years and then came to Cash App where I worked for I think 4 years before I took on this role overseeing all of the Block brands and all of design. So it's a meandering journey, but I think it a thing I have always been particularly interested in is the convergence of brand and product development. And I think that is by nature of just like the specific experiences I've had, the interests I've had, and it's a huge part of our Block design culture today too. So
Yeah, great. I want to spend a lot of time on Block
yeah.
design culture. I, Before getting to that, you talked a little bit about that in your your career trajectory. I would say like as an investor prior to coming here, I probably had it's probably still do like the least conception of like what design is and like what it does.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe just a level set people like how would you define like what design, like what do you and all the people on your team like spend their time doing and thinking about and strategizing about?
Yeah. Oh my God, we could talk about this all day. There are 1,000 answers to that generally, but the way I like to think about design, and I think how we consider design, if we use that moniker here at Block, is pretty simple. It's just imagining what should exist in the world and making it so, making it real. Um, the art of sort of like identifying a need, a problem, a situation, an opportunity, and being able to see that and then also intuiting how to solve it and in what creative way to solve it is like really the heart of design, I think, and being a designer. So that just means what we're doing all day is like obsessing over the details of the experiences of our products, of our brand that exist, but also largely thinking about what doesn't exist, what should exist, how should it exist, really like what deserves to exist, especially now with AI. And I think the world we're in, like a lot of our brain power and muscle is orienting around the judgment of what should exist and how to breathe life into it since the process is changing so much. I think it's also worth noting at Block, I think this is unusual and unlike a lot of companies, our design group encompasses product design and brand creative. So we are like one of our key kind of tenets is considering the experience of the customers as one cohesive experience. So when you're talking to design, or like when you and I are talking about this, we're considering like a pretty broad range of touch points and interactions a customer might have with us. And so that's what we're digging into every day. It's like, how does this feel? How can it feel better? What doesn't exist and what should exist? And, I think it, classically, like many people think design is surface beauty. It sure is, but definitely here and in the best design forward companies, it's really like the functionality, how it works, how it feels, and why it exists. That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, great. So you mentioned AI. There's probably no conversation can escape that topic at this moment in time, but I want to save that for a second and talk a little bit about just like design principles and strategy at the block level. Um, and so what are the principles that you want the design here, or like the design team and just the design and what we ship out to customers, like what are those design principles, or what do you live by? What are the constants that you adhere to regardless of the product or the end customer that's going to be receiving the product?
Yeah, tons to say on this too. I will admit I have like spicy takes on principles, which is like, we have fundamentally at Block core values, which I think are the like strongest establishment of like what dictates how we work and what we make. And I think they're stronger and better than any set of principles that we could kind of develop on top of it. I'm happy to talk through those. You know them as well, but they mean a lot to design, and they actually guide and dictate a lot of how we make decisions on the day to day. And then I can speak to a little bit more. But there is like the definition of excellence and of design in the way that we work is very hard to capture in like a bullet point list of principles. If it was that easy to capture, like anyone could do it, frankly. But there's like really core like spiritual tenets to Block that I think speak to what you're asking about. And so first I'll just say the four corners of Block, which I think Jack must have written years and years ago and still hold. I've been hard pressed to develop additional ones on top of it that don't repeat these core fundamentals. I think they're really incredible. All of them apply to design, but a few of them more than others. The first, in the order I consider them, is connect the blocks, which is about cohesion. It's about bridging. It's about connected experiences. And of course, like considering our ecosystem and the power of our ecosystem. There is start small, which dictates a lot of our day-to-day decisions. You know this as well, but to me, this is like a cultural determination of our investment in learning and experimenting and taking risks, which is very germane to how we design. Like we like having the permission to kind of like experiment and play and start small with decisions is a part of how we get to excellent design. The last two I think are even more critical. Every company is going to have a principle that's like care about the customer centricity, customer experience, and they get a little bit like trite. The third corner is give time back, which I think is like a more boldly stated way of obsessing and centering on the customer, in that it like forces you to make decisions in a certain way. It's like our mission is to give time back. It's the most valuable thing we can give to our customers. We're not in the business of stealing attention or of absorbing customers' attention. And that kind of drives and provides a lot of our just obsession with the customer, our immersion in the customer's lives. We wouldn't be able to drive great design without that. The last one, though, is my favorite, and it's to me, however long ago it was written, it's like one of like Jack's prescient moments, I feel like, which is give it soul. Which I think in this era and moment we're in is like so rich and so good, because it's like it's basically like the thing that only hyper creative real imagination can provide. It's like putting the magic into the experiences and basically not stopping at functional simplicity, but like insisting that we're pushing more into what I consider to be like an emotional experience in our products. And I think that has like helped a lot of us in design, as so much of our process in industry is completely changing and consolidating, maintain like a belief in what I think is will always require like real human creative judgment and human creativity. So give it soul is like probably one of the best design principles, I think, and it's a company-wide principle. Um, that kind of, like on top of that, we have our brands have strong principles. We have strong character in our brands. I think when I step out of our company and talk to others, it's hard to remember how unusually we believe in our brands and how much like we invest in the kind of like character of them and how important that is in everything we're talking about. So you basically end up with principles that are an obsession with the customer, a like deep understanding of the ever-changing kind of culture of our brands, and then of course an understanding of strategy and business, and you basically get to our design principles. That was a long answer, but that's
Yeah,
the
no, I mean, it makes so much sense, and a lot of that really resonates of just like everything that I see every day. Like especially the last ones you talk about the experimentation, giving time back, and giving everything soul. We
yeah
talked a little bit of when we talked to Brad a couple weeks ago now. We talked about just how the idea that it's okay to fail and like fail fast, and like obviously technology is helping us do that more.
yep
But a lot of things, and this probably really resonant in design too, where like a lot of things won't. You'll go down a path and recognize that it's just not worth going down further, and you'll have to like retreat and go down a different path. But
yeah
sometimes you'll find something that's like the next Cash App, which started at zero and became, is now, a huge part of our business, obviously. Or
yeah
you'll find like Goose or something,
yeah
which obviously was really relevant for Brad. And like, there's probably so many of those examples where like someone in design just started on something, just kept like pulling the yarn, and all of a sudden there's this massive like innovation that we have that we can present to customers.
yeah it's such a like it's such a core part of this company and the culture of all teams, certainly design, but I think all of our teams, that ability to take those swings and that the good ideas come from anywhere. I think it's very much like the design strategy as you asked about it. It's if we can kind of equip the creative people on the team with that kind of permission and that kind of cultural currency in the company to take those swings, you get really big javelins, that get thrown that become like the Cash App, but you also just get these like some of our most magical kind of moments and product decisions that actually drive so much of our relationship with our customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? So we think, I know AI is like impossible to not talk a lot about in any of
Yeah.
these conversations. I'm struck by how easy it is to build stuff now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm vibe coding like every day, and the design's not very good because I don't know how to do any of that. But it's like you can get to a point where it's like solid, and I'm sure
Yeah.
people that are 20% or 50% more effective than me can do like something that's way better. I like we probably again, we'll transition into AI at some point, but if you think about just like the design ethos, we put in everything, and just like how you spend your day. There's a lot of competitors now that could like vibe code a lot of what we do,
Mm-hmm.
or at least try to vibe code it and make it look like a facsimile. If someone
Yeah.
tried to do that, like for some of the core functionalities that we have, like what specific part of our design approach do you think would be impossible for them to copy?
Yeah. People have always sort of copied what we do. So it's definitely like the existential question, I think. But I think the truth is it besides obviously like our relationship with our customers, like our knowledge of them, our understanding of like the customer behavior, the data we have, like besides all of that, if you just focus on the experience, the like true answer is someone could easily mimic and replicate a lot of the like core systemic foundational guidelines of our UI on any of our brands. I think the answer would be it's never been in our culture or in our design strategy to be static. It's like part of our design system to evolve and reflect the culture of our customers and where they exist and live. So said differently, I think if someone tried to copy us, we would be changing the game like the
Yeah,
minute later, and how and like how the kind of experiences are evolving. That's a thing we've always done and have been very equipped to do. And I think that's difficult for a lot of other people to pace with. So we're constantly evolving, and I think our tone and our character and the kind of trust we have through those brands is a very is a near impossible thing to replicate, even if you copy the UI,
Yeah. So ultimately, it's the idea that like part of your design philosophy or like how you run the design team, but also just the block's design philosophy is just the constant state of evolution. Like that state of evolving is itself the thing that probably keeps us ahead from a design
Yeah.
perspective.
I think there's always been an investment in that, in this like wheel of change, and in not kind of resting on what's known.
Yeah.
It's like in the fabric of the company, it's in the DNA of the company, generally, and also in how we like make and mold things. We have, of course, like very consistent, strongly held design language fundamentals. It's like we have the sort of functional truths that go into product interfaces as we know them, for example, or brand systems as we know them, that are consistent, that are ours, that are ownable. I see that as kind of like functional design. It's like we have excellence in utility in our design culture. It's like we hold a really high bar on like simple tools that work, and simplifying what is complex, bringing legibility and comprehension to things that are complex. That we've always done that, but I think the thing that's important that we're talking about now is that we've not. That's where a lot of brands and teams and companies, I think, stop, and we've never stopped there. We've always been interested in building emotional design in on top of that. So you can like build functional design that gets people to use your products. You can also build emotional design interactions that make people love your products. And that combination is what has been so, I think, incredible for these brands long before I got here. And that is like the reflection of culture and what's going on, that is kind of always changing, and it requires like an incredible investment in creative energy and like customer immersion to kind of always be reflecting back to the customers what's changing. So like a Square dashboard, the fundamentals of that language, even if it is being brought to life in a new kind of hyper intelligent interface, there's a lot of like really consistent elements of that, but there's these opportunities on top of it that I think is where design and creativity like really comes to bear.
Yeah.
And I think we're the best at that.
A few years ago, I got like a Cash App hoodie. This is before I started working here. I got a Cash App hoodie. And I
Yeah.
said at the time, like unironically, that this is the coolest piece of clothing that I own. And
Yes.
it's kind of amazing that like a financial brand that has 59 million monthly actives and like does all these things that could just create like this artifact that I have, that I'm like, this is the coolest thing I own.
Yeah.
Maybe I should wear that next time for the next on the block.
So many people have asked about the apparel and like, why would you ever do that? Yeah, it's a very good example of connecting culture to money.
But I think it ties to also like what you were saying earlier around give time back.
Yeah,
And I know we talked about this at the beginning, but we've built like what I think are some of the most iconic, trusted, cool brands, like not just in financial services, not just in fintech or technology, but like in the world.
yeah,
And like, iconic, trusted, cool are not things that you typically like ascribe to financial platforms and financial products. So
that's right.
how do you think we were able to do that? And again, maybe bring in the design element, but also I think that the concept of giving time back is also probably important, of just like the design ethos behind that.
Yeah, yeah. The thing you're asking about, I think, is so fascinating. I've thought about it a lot. Like I think it's good. Okay, like this is a little bit of a circle answer, but it will come back to the question. Like, I think it's good to remember, as all great designers do, like, what is the point of all of this? And like our company, Block, has a mission or a purpose that is pretty clear. It's like it's simply economic empowerment, but the strategy that hangs off of that, like the choices we've made through these brands and products, that the way that we are choosing to power people into the global economy has a lot to do with just total transformation of systems, standards, and experiences that were like woefully underserving the people, right? So it's like, so we're in our very core, we're transforming something. It is like a designer's dream, where like we exist to change something really critically, and there's so much psychology around that. And I think like one of the critical initial choices was that to change how people relate to money and finance, there's like a lot of emotional and cultural signals that can like help people feel ownership and confidence and pride about the products they're using, that actually begin to change how they relate to money and finance. And that in and of itself is empowering. So my kind of like analysis is that like very early we made the decisions to make the literal transformed products and interfaces of these tools something that like was closer to like identity and culture than it was some like tactical utility, you know? And it's like that decision way back when that introduced elegance and coolness and all of that in it was like shocking for so long, you know, that it kind of like it just completely like spun people. And I think that's just been in our DNA ever since. You know, when you look at like the Square hardware, you can feel that, you know, the like the degree of quality and what it allowed people, what access it gave people. Cash App, same. Like I've analyzed this to you know, people dress up as Cash App for Halloween. You know, it's like there's like there's some like crazy history in there. But it's again like what we're kind of talking about is like if you can get people to relate to money and finance and these tools in the same way they relate to culture, then you've done something that opens up like an understanding and a kind of relatability. I think there's magic in that, and I think that's a big part of design and like the role design has played in the company. In terms of giving time back, it's really interesting. It's the decisions that we make and have made to make these topics and these things more accessible and enjoyable, like naturally circumvent time. You know, it like naturally collapses like the time it takes to grok and understand or even engage with some of these topics and tools. And so it is related to that, I think, in an interesting way.
I think like I mean, I'm always amazed like when I go in when you go to a seller and you compare like the Square hardware, like still to this day, 16 years later, it just looks better.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, and I don't like again. That's like this design ethos was like there's just something about it that just feels different. And similarly in Cash App, like when I'm using that on a daily, it just feels like more intuitive. It feels cleaner. There's not full app like pop-ups that are like, hey, like you should buy this product from us instead. It's just like I just want to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know those are all like deliberate design decisions, but like it does come back. It's a really good framing. Like it comes back to like giving people time back. Maybe not the Square hardware piece, but like the idea of like you're in the Cash App to do something, not to like get sold something like in your face that's like super invasive, and I have to click out of it and show you all that experience. Um, like when you're thinking about there's like what I would think about is interesting is like there's a kind of a business tension where
Mm-hmm.
like the easy hack is you're like let's put a full I don't even know what you call it like the full like app takeover to like upsell this product, and you probably see a marginal lift because it's like in your face you're going to drive like you're going to drive activity that way, but it's not like in the long term interest of the company or the customers.
Yep.
How do you think about like there's design ethos, but then there's like short-term business performance, long-term business performance, like balancing all of those things. Like what's the maybe like what's the measurement of success for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is, I think, an incredible tension and tightrope walk that design probably anywhere faces and feels. I think, like, especially now in this era, like, there was years ago there was this trade off where it's like you needed more time to like hit some sort of bar of quality, and there was always this like very taut tension between like fast hacky wins and like the like beautiful long-term vision. And that was like the, you know, like 3 4 years ago, that was the sort of state of design. And if you could push for that longer term thing, you would like up level quality in some way. I think that's like pretty fully debunked at this point. I think with the tools we now have at our disposal, we're able to move so much more quickly to like realize the bigger, headier design ideas and breathe life into them. It's not as costly to like bring to life these sort of design iterations. And so we're able to experiment and move with AI so much faster. It's like 3 to 4x what we're able to produce. So a lot of that tension, like just the time tension, I think is actually evaporating, which is fascinating. Um, there is like for sure a reality where there's like near term like low calorie business wins that could like feel like a trade on our design values to like give it soul or give time back, which I think is what you're getting at. We like essentially balance those and would fight those if they would come up, but particularly if they betray any sort of value set we have. But for the most part, like, we have such utter alignment across our functions that the customer experience is a strategic differentiator, that like we're not often in debates about things that betray that quality bar that would get us some near term like low hanging fruit. We are like way more oriented on long term durable relationship growth. And there are like times, like just broadly as a designer, where you're like, if you want to measure the success of design based on like the month of April, it can get tricky. It's like we're like, there is a sort of clairvoyance to being a great designer where it is like, I can see that this is going to ramp over 6 to 12 months, and the trust that is built is immeasurable by your metric, you know? And like if you don't invest in this design language rule that will convey and cue trust and confidence over compounding over many months, it will erode the sentiment and the relationship. It's like those things you have to like fight for as a designer. And we do, and we have. But I think actually this is like very central to being a design forward company. It's like why design at Block doesn't report to product or to engineering or to marketing or whatever. You know, it's because like there is a balanced set of perspectives. And I think if you're good and you're fast enough and you're like at the frontier of things, which we try to be, we're generally able to like activate on the critical things at a very, very high velocity for customers. And if they live up to our values, we'll do those in a day, in 2 days, and it will like help move things forward. It just doesn't come at the cost of our like bigger swings, you know?
Yeah.
But again, like I'm saying that from a moment of where we have all had like our head spun by the ability to move so much fast, you know? And I think 2 years ago, I would have had a different answer, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we've made it almost 30 minutes without talking a lot about AI, but I do think we should go there next. So I feel like there's a couple of things to hit on as it relates to AI. Like one is just aesthetics and just like
Yeah.
how building AI feels like the tech. And then maybe another one is like the technology and the tooling. And you're talking about things that used to take days or weeks can now be done, like, you know, it's almost instantaneously, and just like what that does for design. But maybe we could start on the aesthetic side. Or so you gave a talk internally, I don't know, 6 or so months ago, maybe 8 months ago now, on taste, and I was just like really fascinated by it. So I'd love to spend a few minutes on that. Like, how do you define taste? Like, how AI impacts taste, and like what does taste mean to you, and like how does that infuse like your design philosophy and your approach?
Yeah. Yeah. It is such a like word right now too. I think when I gave that talk too, it was already becoming like a catchphrasey word. Even whenever that was September, I think when I did that, which is part of why I wanted to speak to it. And now I think it's been chewed to smithereens. But whether like the industry's tired of talking about it or not, it's still a real thing, and it's still
Yeah,
very like critical to like what we're experiencing. Taste, I think, the way I kind of thought about it and shared in that talk is it's interesting. It's like taste is just knowing what's good. And when you, as a person, like everybody has their own taste, you know, it's like not some like magical thing that only a few people have. It's like you have preferences, you have taste. The point of that talk was like to try to begin to understand and articulate the difference between developing your own personal taste and having great taste and being like a tastemaker and leading with taste, particularly for a brand. And there was a lot of that conversation was like, how do you develop that? And like, what are the ways that our team develop it? But I think really central to my thinking on that is two things. I think having like great taste and leading with taste in the work we do is not about like, it's not just about identifying like that's good and that's not, though that, of course that's a big part of the job. It's way more uncomfortable than that. It's like way more about like predicting what is gonna resonate with people later before they know it. And that requires like such just like courage, you know, like it requires like all these things. And again, that's what I talked about in that talk, but it like means you have to build up this sort of like scar tissue around like experiencing the world and understanding what's happening in culture. It is not static. You know, it's like a thing you have to like constantly be paying attention to. And then you have to have the fortitude to kind of like chart the course before other people get there. That I think is the taste thing that we're talking about in the industry when people are like losing their shit about taste. You know, it's like how what is that thing? And this is actually it's related to your very first question. Like this that quality is why I'm kind of like no set of principles are going to give you that shit. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
not like it's not like you can't put a poster on the wall that's going to teach you how to do that. It's a real practice. Um,
yeah,
and I think generally people in the industry who are like poo-pooing that as a differentiator are people who don't have it or who don't understand it. You know, it's like I think you can call it something different, but like that creative judgment and like just the spark of creativity to like put something net new out there with the bet that it's gonna like take hold is like a it's like a real art. And the reason it's so such a topic is just because um obviously like AI is going to make the act of creation so easy that anybody can do it, which is amazing and incredibly exhilarating and empowering. And most people have said for a full year now that like great taste is what will kind of like bring the bar up and like will kind of like emerge from the pack. I think that's true, but I think it's always been true. Like there's always been really weak slop stuff out in the world. You know, it's like
yeah,
there's 100 brands or companies that have like so design. There's you know, it's like it's been the reality. Like a creative people not just in design are like able to step above that and put something new out, and that's like it's very germane to like everything we're talking about really. But I do think it's a learned thing. I do think it's like a muscle you learn. I don't think it's like some god-given ability. And I think most excellent creatives and designers have dedicated years to like figuring out why, you know, that inclination.
yeah. I think one of the slides you had was like just all the credit cards that look exactly the same, and they're like
Yeah.
a cobalt blue, and then it's like Cash
Yeah.
App, like anyone can design their own card, and you can
Yeah.
have just different stickers on it and different like completely
Yeah.
different aesthetics depending on the person, and that's
Yep.
that's like a very deliberate design choice. But there's also elements to your point of like being aligned with product. There's a product choice, there's an engineering choice around
Yeah.
that, and like so it's really cool how aligned like the design like being unique in design like flows through like everything that we do.
Yeah. It's so true. It's like a by functionalizing as a company built of functions and having us as like equal kind of players, it really has ranged us and set us up to be pretty fluid across functions. It's like I have product management partners who have like incredible design instincts, you know, and my design team is like manifesting most of the front end of our products because they're engineering now. You know, it's like we are pretty
Yeah.
like we're pretty equipped to like be fluid across these functions. It's because of the like cultural um, terms around like creativity just being so. It's definitely not limited to just design. But that the cash card is still my favorite. There's like so many design decisions and product decisions over years and even recently that live up to this, but the Cash App card is still the most visceral like just spike the football kind of thing. You know, it's like the perfect example of what we're talking about. And it's the perfect example of giving it soul. You know, it's like just like don't settle, like just don't stop at what there should be. It drives results. It like explicitly has like created this monster product there, I believe. And so I love that story. I think it's one of our best examples.
Well, and I think it's very analogous to Square. Like the first like dongle that would be plugged into the headphone jack, people would be like, "What is that?" And then people take their cash card out of their wallet, and it's just like, "Whoa, what is that thing?"
Yeah.
And it's been like foundational to bringing a peer-to-peer network in its early days to the fourth largest debit program in the U.S., one of the largest financial service firms in the U.S. And it's just like every time I take the card out, it's just like a conversation piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's cool. There's more to come there, which will be exciting. Um, so we talked a little bit about like design aesthetics and AI and how that how do we avoid like the slopification or whatever the term is of just like everything. Talk a little bit about like AI from a technological perspective. I've like the data I was pulling together with some folks in your team prior to last earnings. Like the amount of like pull requests, basically production code changes that are being done by designers, like went has gone parabolic.
Yeah.
And maybe a year, like maybe 18 months ago, it was like effectively zero. And I forget the numbers now, but the second half of last year, like the line started going vertical, and that was even true like through the early part of the first quarter before we reported. How is AI as a technology like impacting like what you do, like what your team is capable of, and like how like the design workflow evolves?
Yeah. It's such a trip. It's been really incredible. Yeah, the since we reduced the team size, the amount of like lines of code that designers have written has even gone up like 250% or something. Like it's just like an absolute kind of like wildfire. It's incredible how fast we're able to move. Um yeah, it's interesting. Like many product design organizations with the advent of these tools a year and a half ago like began moving towards code, of course. And there is like an intimacy with building and code that certainly like had a learning curve for I think some contingents of product designers. But like the most simple way to put it is like these tools equipped every designer to just breathe life into things that they formerly had to like plan out and hand off to somebody else. Like the speed and kind of like costliness of that process changed so quickly. What's interesting is watching like different lenses and different types of designers react differently. So like a huge majority of our product designers are now empowered to and are able to build full product features, right? And so they're doing that. We are also kind of like for a long time we were just realized we could kind of like vibe code the roadmap. It's like we can there's no lack of ideas. It's like it was always just like this hedging careful thing of like, well, I have 40 ideas, they're fragile, I can mock up these 10. There's 3 of them I think other people will like. There's 1 of them I could afford to prototype, and then I might be able to hand out to an engineer. And now you can literally build 40 of them and then decide which one feels good. Like that design process of yesterday is like completely collapsed. And so I think that to a designer, it's like the positive way to look at it is like just incredible speed from idea to reality. It's like it's just like your first question. It's like, what does a designer do? They imagine what could exist and then they make it. It's like that used to take 6 months, it takes a week. It's like it's just this like exhilarating kind of freedom. There's a lot of the process in design that designers used to control that has been gobbled and will continue to be automated, and that in the industry like is causing and has caused a natural identity crisis. But the like creative kernel of the idea and the ensurement that the thing at the end is at our bar are still very like human qualities. And they're fortunately like for Block, like we have hired and built a team that like indexes so high on that creativity that we're basically doing the same thing we were doing. We've just collapsed the middle. There's interesting parallels like in design, as I said, we're blended brand creative too, and you have like the same fascinating experience happening there where you have creatives who have figured out like how to accelerate their own like ideas for art and marketing and branding in a very similar way. And it's just allowing us to like catapult forward with so much and essentially clear away what was hours of now vanished work. And it's just like the full might of the creative energy is going towards like actual idea and getting it to customers. So it's like you asked earlier about like measuring design success. Like we can kind of like assess and understand various aspects of design, like time from idea to customer value is like a thing we've talked about, a thing that Jack has talked about. Like that's obviously changing. We can like measure and benchmark how much faster we're moving. There you can like assess other elements of like literally just customer impact, quantity of ideas. There's just so many things. But like I think if there's one thing I am paying the most attention to, it is just like when you can develop ideas this quickly, like how much higher does the bar go with those ideas, like with how they're realized, right? So it's like if you can breathe life into 10 ideas where you used to only be able to do 1, you're like developing fragile ideas that would have just vanished before, and now they get lifted up. And I believe that's actually like raising our bar overall, because like we're not killing things before they should be killed, and so we're having this, like, it's like the most creative time, I think, in a lot of ways, that it certainly I've ever been a part of. But there's just like tactical hardcore things too, that's like we're developing the front end. Some of our smaller teams, Title, Proto, like BitKey, those teams, the designers are like handling most of the front end of the code. That's like an incredible feeling. And at the same time, there's engineers who are building and designing products too. So we're like it's the like give time back. We're just trying to move quickly to get incredible things to customers, and we haven't had to lower the bar. So
I'm just like continually blown away at just the collapsing of idea to, like, it's not like you don't collapse idea from idea to like fully ready production thing, but like idea to prototype to like actually someone who can build this can do this in like a few days. It's just like it's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And there's a lot of that we're learning to encode into the intelligence that is just going to make the manifestation of those ideas closer and closer to pin. It's like you said, you're vibe coding something, it doesn't feel right. You can like tell it might not look right. It's like we're going to get better and better, I think, at atomizing our design standards and languages. And we've already done this. We have tools built across the spectrum of tone and character of our brands, and we're getting closer and closer to it. And it's kind of staggering.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I mean, I'm finding like I'm putting pull requests into production, or like trying to merge a PR, and then builder bot or something else will come back and say, hey, you should think about doing this PR this way. And then like I'll bring that into the other AI tool I'm using, and they'll be like, yeah, that's actually like a good suggestion. And I can only imagine, like, in whatever period of time where there's also like a design layer on top of that, that's like, hey, like that like technically works, but it would be better designed if you bring in like this library or whatever. And then that gets it even further down the line of like bringing it to you or the rest of your core and Jack of like, how does this feel to you? And then we just collapsing it further.
Yeah. There's like we had a whole like heady conversation on the design side, which is the degree to which we're like, many of us will become builders and we'll be doing exactly what you just described. Many of us will become like essentially editors, which has always been an aspect of like what design and creative is. But it's interesting to think about that. Or people will become both, but like there is this like critical role of like pulling cohesion together and like curating and editing things in this world when you kind of imagine where we'll get in the next year. That's crazy. But again, that requires, human creative judgment. It's just at either end. Yeah.
And then, so maybe the last topic for AI is just bringing this to our customers, which is probably the most important, and ultimately like the thing that matters more than any of the way that we're building. Jack has talked a ton about proactive intelligence. Like when we talk to investors, we talked a lot about that. Like anytime we're talking about what we're doing for customers, like the idea of proactive intelligence is front and center in what will ship soon in ManagerBot and MoneyBot. Can you talk about the design challenge of like embedding a product with proactive intelligence, and just like maybe even talk more generally that there's probably a lot of people that they wouldn't even know what to ask.
Yeah.
The AI, they wouldn't even know like what to do with it. And so just talk about the design challenge of bringing this like new type of product into the world and like how we're thinking about doing that.
Yeah. It's also really incredible to watch unfolding. When we're talking about proactive intelligence and we're actively like, of course, building that and shipping it to customers right now, like literally today, aspects of it. But like the whole conception we have around the UI or the interface that designers have been working within, for years and years and years, it just like drifts. It's like the Matrix. It's like the walls are not the walls. It's like you have to like rearrange like your kind of understanding of the whole thing. And what you end up like, the challenges for design, if you can kind of leap there, the challenges for design go from like perfecting an experience inside of this container with this static navigation and like, I know this button is there, and you kind of like go into this space where like the proactive intelligence is dynamic. It is like changing constantly, and what you're designing for is character and cues and like tone, and it's like you're basically designing the system and how it will manifest, how it will interface with the customer, but it's like not your grandfather's interface kind of thing. It's like a completely different world. And so it's again another test of like those core design tenets, and like, can you give something soul when it's not the frame you're used to? Like if you're
Yeah.
really good, you can, you know. And it's like, if you
Yeah.
really think about like, how is the system like engaging proactively with the customer, like how is it interacting back and forth, like how does it manifest in the screen, is there a screen, is this something, you know? It's like you start to question kind of all these things. So the design challenge is all of that, like more specifically literally right now, where we are still in the sort of like you're talking about MoneyBot, you're still in this like current day understanding of Cash App, but we're at the like very edge of it being fully dynamic. And so the team was just telling me earlier, like we might have had like idea we built, and we would like maybe A/B test something, or we would like put a couple manifestations out. Like right now they're testing more than a dozen like manifestations, because it's just like it's not going to be one, you guys. Like it's going to be like, we have to watch how it behaves proactively. There's a bunch of other interesting stuff. There's, as always and forever, there's like, how is trust conveyed through what feels like a relationship, you know? And I think that's going to be like one of the headiest things. And I just like, are we imprisoned in this chat paradigm or not, like as a society? I think is like I don't know the answer. I don't think anybody knows the answer, but it's to me it is like a classic like existential design question, which is like, have we just gotten comfortable with this back and forth, and there's something bigger, who's gonna discover that and invent that? Or is this sort of back and forth communication thing actually like the limit of our human kind of engagement with these things, and that's what we need to be optimizing for? I don't know. That is like a fascinating kind of conundrum, you know, and I think it's like a designer's paradise in some ways to try to think about it.
So it feels like then there's like maybe a spectrum, but there's probably like three way stations. One is, in the past there's like a box, and then you design the UI on the box.
Yep.
There's like the middle of like, okay, now this is a chat interface. There's way more dynamicism there, but it's still like an interface that you're designing on top of, because it's like it's chat instead of a box.
Yep.
But then there's something even further afield where it's like maybe the chat goes away, the box goes away, and it's just you're designing something like in the ether, and it's just there is no boundary around it. It's hard to wrap my head around, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's like ultimately the vision of like where like we want to get to for ManagerBot and MoneyBot, is like you don't just stop at the chat interface. There's like something beyond that is more intuitive and native, and like that doesn't like pull things out of you. Like it pushes things to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we know the answer, but I like an easier way to grok it is like there's like language and like the language models and like that communication back and forth. Like what the team's playing with is like, there, of course, obviously there is like I'll just call it art. There are like elements, componentry, visuals, engage, like mechanisms that manifest as well, that aren't just like letters and words, you know? And so it's like we're designing for a dynamic system that can compose anything that is relevant to any customer in our brand language, is like a technical feat, you know? And it's like, that is like so whether, you know, it's going to like draw an incredible data visualization, or it's God knows what else, or it's just going to use text. It's like that. The challenge is, how do we enable this system to do this in a way that still honors our brands and our relationship with customers and builds trust with them? We know like we have so much of the power and capability of this company to do this in a way that we think no one else can. And it's like, we have to like keep the bar on the actual experience high too. So it's wild. It's like the most exciting and crazy, I think, thing I've encountered.
Well, I also think it's amazing that you think about like what in the old version of Square Cash App, like you kind of know what the customer is going to do with it, because it's like, okay, we're going to put this tile here and this tile here and this button here, and then maybe this button will fit better there, and like we'll do A/B testing and or what have you. And now it's like, if you do proactive intelligence right, like you actually don't know what the customer's going to do with it. And so like, how do you have like design principles and design ethos And again, to your point, like keep it within like guardrails or whatever. Like when you don't actually know what the customer will do with it, I can imagine that's like a pretty fun challenge.
It's such a fun challenge. And we have like, for example, like there's like tone of voice that comes through these things. And it's like yesterday we would have had a team of writers who were like determining messaging and content flow and word choice. Now we have trained the intelligence here at Block on our standards, our tone of voice, our grammar, our like how these brands kind of how they should present themselves through language.
Yeah.
Model design is like another way of saying it. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. It's like the way it kind of sounds, And so it's like there's things like that as examples. It's like there are principles and standards and a kind of encoding of like the spirit of the tone of voice that we have like baked in that are kind of like part of the build. And we're just kind of like working through all the elements of the design experience to figure that out. But again, we'll never not be like looping back to retrain and edit, and we'll never not be throwing new kind of like firecrackers in. I believe. I think that's like the way we stay human and creative. And
Yeah.
or Jack calls that like the edge, in the model. It's like if the world model is like the center, it's like we will exist. Our craft must exist kind of at the edge of that gobstopper of a thing. It's like we will be there kind of like throwing these things in and keeping that creative bar. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it is fascinating times. All right, so I had a couple final questions to wrap up, just kind of bring things full circle, so maybe I'll start with what are the one or two things that you think Block does better than anyone else in the world?
Oh man, I think the entirety of this conversation is a good example of what I think Block does better than anyone in the world. I think there are few companies. This is a designer's perspective. There's few companies on this planet that have the kind of bravery and interest and permission built to pursue the quality of the experience being like a strategic advantage like this. And I think we're among them, if not at the top of them. And it's why I work here, and it's why I think we have the most incredible design talent here, because it's a thing we do, and it's a thing we do well. And I think that is not just like a written kind of priority. It's like in the genome of the company, and I think Block does risk taking and challenging assumptions better than certainly any company I've engaged or interacted with, and I've yet to find a parallel. So it's like core to everything we do that we can push, and like test that status quo. And that's related to almost everything we talk about. So I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah. And maybe on the flip side of that, what are one or two things you think we can do better?
I always think in these like yin yangs, but like I think there's an Achilles heel there. Like I think it's actually very interesting and related to AI, but like I think what we can do better has always been the time it takes to like wrap the rate of change we embrace into stories and communicate it. Like how I think we could be better at sharing the intricacies of what we're doing with the world. I think we could be better at like pacing with what we do, even internally. Like there is like the rate of change and our adaptability is so high. Like when I'm recruiting people, I always say like, if you want the predictable status quo, do not talk to this company. It's like, that is like not how we move and how we thrive. And so I think there's like counter effects to that. What's interesting is that I think with like this central intelligence that's growing, a lot of the like clarity and cascading of information and storytelling will increasingly be accessible and automated. So it's like there's a world where like our weak point, which I think we can do better on, communication, messaging externally and internally, gets kind of like automated and taken care of in a big way. So anyway, that would be my take on it. The rate of change is fast, and it's hard to like stop and like really share as cleanly as possible, like what we're doing,
Well, I feel like one of the core, like, I don't even know if Jack would say it, so like one of the core strategies of the business is just constantly embracing change.
Yes.
Telling yourself like that's a hard thing to communicate, because it's like when I think about my role, like here's a box that we exist in, and like we'll always exist in this box, like that's not going to change. Versus like we're all like the whole point is to change.
Yeah,
It's
that's
happening all
right.
the time.
Yeah. It really like working here, and I think working for Jack is like it's like an exercise in personal transformation. Like it's like if you like can succeed here, you are like I just think it's like the cream of the crop in terms of absolute learning. You
Yeah,
know, it's like you're just like constantly learning. I've revised opinions I've held for so long at this company, and to me that is like the most magical thing. You know, it's like where your mind is going to be constantly changing, and it's incredible. I think that's why we're able to make the kind of things we are. You know,
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great spot to end it. Brooke, thanks so much for doing this. It was great
yeah, it
talking to
was so fun.
you in the
Yeah,
forum, and I'll see everyone who's listening the next time. Thank you all for joining.
thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.